What would happen if you dug the Earth without stopping? No limits, just going down deeper and deeper. With every kilometer, a new question arises that science still cannot answer. Where exactly would you end up? And what would be waiting for you there? The bottom of the Earth is one of the most inaccessible places in the known universe. We know more about the surface of Mars than what lies beneath our feet. Everything that is beyond certain kilometers of depth remains as a great void in the books of science, a space of hypotheses, simulations, and silences. But is that really all it is? Does the absence of answers mean there is nothing? Or is what's hidden down there so extreme, so incomprehensible, that we'd rather not face it? Now I want to hear from you. If it were possible to reach the center of the Earth, where do you think this journey would end? And what do you believe exists in the end? Comment below. What if I told you that some scientific theories are starting to raise possibilities that go far beyond what we learn in school? Stay with me, because what you will see in this video may completely change the way you see our planet. The Earth, seen from the outside, appears stable, solid, predictable. But inside, she is an organism in constant motion, an extremely complex system, divided into layers that operate under conditions that defy human understanding. The Earth's crust is the thinnest layer. It covers the surface of the planet and, in proportion, is as shallow as the skin of an apple. It's where we live, where we built civilizations, where all of human history took place. Just below it is the mantle, a thick, dynamic mass that stretches nearly 3,000 kilometers. This region is home to extremely hot materials that move slowly, like an underground current that keeps the continents moving. After the mantle, we find the outer core, a liquid layer composed mainly of iron and nickel in a molten state. The constant movement of this material is what generates the Earth's magnetic field, an invisible force that protects the planet against destructive solar radiation. And at the center of it all is the inner core, a solid sphere of supercondensed metal that remains firm even under unimaginable pressures and temperatures comparable to those on the surface of the Sun. Despite the theoretical detail, everything we know about the Earth's interior is, in fact, a construction based on seismic waves, density calculations, computer simulations, and analogies with meteorites. We never saw any of this with our own eyes. The deepest well ever dug by humanity was the Kola Superdeep Well in Russia. It reached just over 12 kilometers, which represents a microscopic fraction of the distance to the center of the planet. To give you an idea, if the Earth were an orange, we would only have pierced the thickness of the peel. And even so, the heat was so intense that the machines began to fail. We couldn't go any further. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. Where we live is, in many ways, still unexplored territory. The Earth's core remains a physical enigma, a blind spot in our scientific knowledge. We study the universe, we look at other galaxies, but we barely scratch what lies beneath our feet. But what if it were possible to keep digging? What if we ignored the limits of technology? There is a depth where data disappears, and the unknown begins to take over. Let's suppose that someone or some technology was capable of digging without stopping, breaking through each layer of the Earth with absolute efficiency. No technical obstacles, no physical limits, just a straight dig towards the center. In the first kilometers, the challenges would be moderate. The upper layers of soil and rock offer resistance but are familiar. The environment is still recognizable. However, as the depth increases, everything starts to change, too fast to ignore. The temperature rises exponentially. Each kilometer dug brings the body closer to the planet's internal heat. Before long, the environment becomes incompatible with any known life form. Thermal radiation begins to distort even the strongest materials. At 50, 100, 200 kilometers below the surface, there is no breathable air, there is no natural light, and the density of the environment becomes oppressive. The pressure reaches absurd levels. The surrounding rocks are not static, they compress and move with force. The excavation turns into a constant battle against structural collapse. The deeper you go, the more the space tries to close itself again. When surpassing the crust and reaching the upper mantle, the scenario changes drastically. This region is not composed of solid rock as we know it. Here, the minerals behave like an extremely dense and viscous fluid. Constant advancement would require not only physical resistance, but constant adaptation of the excavating structure as pressure and heat act as opposing forces in real time. Further down, matter begins to acquire behaviors that we cannot observe on the surface. Chemical elements begin to interact in an unstable way. Any attempt at visual registration would be compromised. The sensors would not withstand the environment. The friction, the heat, the composition, everything acts as a natural defense system against any intrusion. No communication would be possible. No current human equipment would be capable of transmitting information continuously. Any attempt to visually map this path would be limited, partial, and temporary. The darkness becomes absolute, not because of the absence of light, but because of the inability to keep it on. It is a journey where every meter requires superhuman effort, and where the only certainty is that the further down you go, the more inhospitable the conditions become. Not in a symbolic way, but physically, chemically, real. The environment itself is hostile by definition. And yet, in this hypothetical scenario, the excavation continues, and if someone really was able to move forward, facing all of this without stopping, I wouldn't know what to expect, because nothing, absolutely nothing, on this path was meant to be walked. In a world where most of the answers already seem ready, few questions still provoke silence. And that, what exists deep within the earth, remains without a definitive answer. Perhaps this is precisely what makes it so powerful. Uncertainty is not comfortable, but it is necessary. It opens up space for reflection, investigation, and real discovery. And when content manages to touch this point, provoke this essential doubt, A-like isn't just a click. It's a sign that it's worth keeping asking, that it's worth continuing to create. It's worth digging deeper. Then leave. You're like, now, what if everything we've faced so far is still nothing compared to what's to come? Because as we get closer to the center, effects arise that the human body cannot bear, neither physically nor mentally. In the real world, there is no body prepared to face what exists below the Earth's surface. After a certain point, biology itself becomes useless. The systems that maintain life, breathing, circulation, thermal balance, begin to fail long before any real attempt to approach the nucleus is made. The absence of oxygen is one of the first obstacles. The atmosphere does not follow the depth. A few kilometers below the crust, breathable air ceases to exist. Even with an autonomous life support system, atmospheric pressure makes breathing an unfeasible process. Chest compression, lung collapse, and circulatory system failure would occur in rapid sequence. The temperature, in turn, is not just high, it is destructive. Estimates indicate that at a depth of around 3,000 kilometers, the heat can exceed 5,000 degrees Celsius. At this point, any known thermal protective equipment would be consumed within seconds. The skin wouldn't resist. Bones, even the densest ones, would disintegrate amid thermal radiation and absolute pressure. But the impact would not just be physical. The human body depends on visual, sensory, and temporal references to maintain its sanity. In a completely dark, oppressive environment without contact with the outside world, the brain begins to create distortions. Spatial disorientation intensifies. The notion of time disappears. Internal sounds amplify, recurring thoughts become obsessive. Absolute isolation not only weakens, it breaks the mental structure. Research into extreme confinement in environments, such as submarines and space stations, indicates that isolation, combined with environmental pressure, can induce hallucinations, panic attacks, and dissociation. Now multiply these conditions by thousands. The journey to the center of the Earth, in the current state of technology and human biology, does not represent a challenge. It represents a sentence. What if future technology allowed this trip? Are we about to discover the impossible? Modern science has sent probes to study the sun, collected data on alien atmospheres, and even photographed black holes. But curiously, he still knows very little about what lies beneath his own feet. As we approach the Earth's core, we enter a region where instruments fail, data becomes inaccurate, and direct observation is simply not possible. There are no physical samples extracted from the core. No probe came even close. Everything we know about the planet's deep interior is inferred from seismic waves, the behavior of minerals at high pressure, density calculations, and computational projections. From about 3,000 kilometers deep, all information is based on scientific assumptions, not actual observations. We are dealing with an area that remains inaccessible. Comparatively, we have more reliable data about the surface of Mars or distant moons than about the exact composition of the Earth's core. The bottom of the oceans, however unexplored, is still observable with current technology. The center of the Earth, no, the scale of inaccessibility is absolute. It is believed that at around 5,000 kilometer depth, the pressure reaches millions of times what we feel at sea level. The heat exceeds 5,000 degrees C. In this environment, materials behave in ways that we cannot fully simulate. Cast iron moves in unknown ways. The magnetic fields generated there oscillate with gigantic forces. It is possible that there are states of matter that we have not yet been able to classify. There is no mystical mystery involved. But there is a clear limit, that of our current ability to observe, and this limit alone is what makes this region so enigmatic. It is a point where science, with all its methodology, is forced to work in the dark, supported by hypotheses, approximations and models that are still being tested. And when knowledge stops, human curiosity tends to become more intense, because there is something deeply unsettling about knowing that we live in a partially unknown world, a world that rotates, that pulsates, and that holds at its center a space that still escapes our most basic understanding. When we look at the center of the Earth, we don't just see layers of rock and metal. We see a blind spot in our own knowledge. It's as if we are living with a secret that no one has managed to reveal. And that's precisely what makes this mystery so powerful. Each person has a theory, a vision, a hypothesis that may make sense, or not. And you, what do you think is at the center of the Earth? Do you believe that what's down there could be more than just matter in an extreme state? Comment your theory below. Let's create a space of ideas together where questions matter as much as answers, because among all the hypotheses raised to date, there is one that intrigues even scientists, an explanation that tries to describe what is at the core using real data, but which raises more doubts than certainties. Science, despite all the limitations regarding direct access to the Earth's core, has already built a very robust model of what may exist down there. According to most geophysicists, the core is composed of two distinct parts, one external and liquid, the other internal and solid. The outer core is a layer of liquid iron and nickel which constantly rotates. It is this movement that generates the Earth's magnetic field, an invisible barrier that protects the planet from solar particles and cosmic radiation. Without this field, life as we know it would not exist. It is the silent shield that keeps our atmosphere stable and functional. Deeper than that, at the absolute center of the planet, would be the inner core. Science believes it is a solid sphere of extremely dense iron. In its current state, this structure remains intact despite the extremely high temperature and crushing pressure. Some hypotheses suggest that it could literally be a gigantic metallic crystal, a dense, uniform formation with unique physical properties. If confirmed, it would be the largest natural crystal known. The estimated temperatures at this point exceed 6,000 degrees Celsius, comparable to the surface of the sun. The pressure there is so absurd that the atoms behave in ways that we cannot fully reproduce in the laboratory. There are those who believe that the nucleus may contain forms of matter that have not yet been classified, caused by these extreme conditions. At the same time, there are proposals not accepted by the scientific community that attempt to explain what is at the center of the planet from more imaginative perspectives. The best known is the hollow Earth theory, which suggests the existence of vast habitable underground spaces within the planet. Another hypothesis, equally marginal, speaks of a silicon-based biosphere composed of extremophile life forms that would survive heat and pressure. These ideas have no empirical evidence, but emerge as a response to the void left by technological limitations. When we can't see clearly, speculation often fills in the gaps. But what if the Earth's core is not the end, but the beginning of something else? There is something deeply human about wanting to understand what is hidden, especially when that something is literally beneath our feet. The idea of an unknown space within the very planet we live on not only generates curiosity, it causes uneasiness. Why does this affect us so much? Maybe because deep down we seek control. Knowing what is at the center of the Earth is, to some extent, an attempt to fill a gap, a way of establishing dominion over a world that still eludes us. We live in an era where data and answers are just a click away, but we can't accurately answer what's beneath us. This creates an uncomfortable feeling that we are still surrounded by the unknown, even at home. This curiosity can also come from fear. Not a direct or conscious fear, but something quieter. The fear of what cannot be predicted. The fear of what perhaps shouldn't be touched. When a space remains inaccessible for so long, it gains symbolic weight. It comes to represent more than geology. It comes to symbolize everything we still don't understand about the world and ourselves. And there is yet another possibility, that this curiosity is a reflection of our survival instinct. Knowing what exists at the center of the planet is not just a matter of science or adventure. It is an attempt to understand the system that sustains our existence, understanding the basis, the core, the deepest functioning of the place where we live. In the end, perhaps the big question isn't even what's there, but why does this matter so much to us? Why this desire to dig so deep, even without knowing if there is something waiting? This search says more about us than about the Earth itself. Because the unknown beneath us is not just a scientific challenge, it is also a mirror of our oldest doubts. This is the type of content that almost no one talks about, but everyone should see. If you know someone who also questions what could exist at the center of the Earth, send this video now. Let's make this mystery echo beyond the surface. There are a lot of people out there who think they already know everything about the planet where they live. But only those who really seek answers will understand the value of what is being revealed here. Share this video with anyone who is part of this group, because this conversation cannot be hidden. For now, the idea of reaching the Earth's core seems impossible. But the history of science is made up precisely of ideas that were once considered unattainable. Flight, space, genetic manipulation, they all began as distant theories. What if the center of the planet was the next limit to be challenged? For this journey to become viable, technologies that do not yet exist would be needed. Machines capable of traversing matter at temperatures exceeding 5,000 degrees, thermal shields that resist underground radiation, and structures that withstand pressures millions of times greater than those on the surface. Some speculative research already suggests the use of exotic materials such as graphene, extremely high-strength metal alloys, or even compounds inspired by materials of space origin for future high-depth excavators. Other theories speak of electromagnetic shields that would dissipate heat and create controlled drilling corridors, as if they were tunnels protected by force fields. The motivation to develop such technologies would not just be scientific. The search for new energy sources, such as concentrated geothermal heat reserves, could make the core a strategic goal. In the future of climate instability and scarcity of resources, the installation of underground colonies, isolated from the atmosphere and energetically self-sufficient, may no longer be fiction. But there is another reason that no one can ignore: the search for answers. Reaching the core would be like opening the heart of the planet, knowing precisely how it behaves, how it vibrates, how it stays active. This information would have a direct impact on our understanding of earthquakes, climate change, and even the origin of the magnetic field that protects life on Earth. Maybe we're not just talking about digging. Perhaps we are talking about redefining the limits of human existence on the planet, not as an escape, but as an expansion. If there was a door deep inside, would you have the courage to walk through it? For centuries, we have looked to the sky for answers, but the real void may be much closer, under us. The center of the Earth remains inaccessible, surrounded by layers that not even the most advanced technology has been able to penetrate. We don't know exactly what's there, and perhaps that says more about us than the planet itself. This obsession with digging to the end, with discovering what exists at the deepest point on Earth, is not just scientific, it is symbolic. It reflects a human characteristic that drives us to go beyond the visible, to challenge the obvious, to face the unknown, even when everything tells us to stop. Perhaps what is at stake is not discovering what is at the core of the planet, but revealing what exists at the center of our need to understand. Because deep down, the geological mystery connects with another greater mystery: the human mind. The curiosity, the restlessness, the refusal to accept that some things should remain hidden. The center of the Earth functions as metaphor and reality. It is there, motionless, rotating in absolute silence, affecting everything around it, but without ever showing itself completely. This attracts us because we instinctively feel that to understand the universe out there, we first need to understand what pulses inside. Not just within the planet, but within us. The search for what is hidden beneath the surface is, in part, an attempt to understand what lies beyond the layers we have built around us. Layers of belief, fear, limitation. And the deeper they are, the harder it is to know what really awaits us at the end of the excavation. The center of the Earth is the greatest absence that exists beneath our feet. And that's precisely why it matters, because there are still questions that are worth more than any answer. Perhaps this search for what is hidden beneath our feet is just a reflection of what we also hide when we look at the sky. Because the mystery doesn't end at the center of the Earth. It expands everywhere, in all directions, above, below, inside, outside. What if the universe has other layers as inaccessible as the planet's core? What if there are hidden zones, unknown forces, phenomena that defy everything we call reality? Now tell me, what mysterious hypothesis about the universe has crossed your mind? That idea that seems too crazy to say out loud, but that makes sense when no one is looking. Comment below, because some of these theories may be exactly what we need to explore, and maybe, who knows, your idea becomes the channel's next mystery. In the end, perhaps what's really scary isn't what's down there, but what we still can't explain. Because the mystery of the center of the Earth is just one of many that still surround us. It's a reminder that we live with questions that no one has answered, and that often it is this unknown that moves us. Being part of this is more than watching videos. It's participating in a constant search for answers that defy logic and reality. Here, each theory takes you further. Each new question brings you closer to the inexplicable. So subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because the next reveal could be much closer than you think, and you won't want to miss it. And now click on the video that appears on your screen. The journey is not over yet, and what comes next may make you question everything you thought you knew about the universe.